My mother ruined my promotion dinner with a toast. Not a clumsy toast. Not an awkward one. A deliberate, weaponized toast. She stood up in the middle of the restaurant, tapped her glass like she was at a wedding, and said loudly, "You can't outgrow us. We built you." Half the room turned. My boss was there. Two directors from another department. My wife, Nora, was sitting next to me with her hand resting on my knee, like she could feel the moment before it detonated. I remember the exact second my stomach dropped, because my mother's smile widened in that familiar way. The smile that looks proud to strangers. The smile that means behave to me. This dinner was supposed to be simple. My company had promoted me to operations manager after 3 years of grinding. No nepotism. No shortcuts. Long hours, weekends, on-call disasters, the kind of work that makes you forget what day it is. My boss, Mark, had offered to take the team out to celebrate. "Bring your wife," he'd said. "Make it a thing." Nora was excited. She bought a dress she rarely splurges on. She wore her hair down. She looked like someone who deserved a peaceful evening. I almost didn't invite my parents. That should tell you everything. But my dad had been trying lately. Calling more. Asking how work was going. Sounding hopeful in a way that made me feel cruel for keeping distance. And my mom had been tolerable. For a few months. Tolerable is the word you use when your baseline is chaos. So I told them. And my mother insisted on coming. "It's your promotion," she said. "I should be there. I'm your mother." I hesitated, and she pounced on the hesitation immediately. "What? Are you ashamed of us now?" she asked. "No," I said. "It's just a work thing. And we're your family," she replied. Family comes first. That phrase has been a shackle in my life. Family comes first. Not your peace. Not your wife. Not your sanity. Family. Which meant her. So we arrived at the restaurant, and I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be fine. My mother greeted my boss like she was running for office. "Oh my goodness, Mark," she said, clasping his hands. "Thank you for recognizing my son. He's always been a hard worker. Always. Even as a child." Mark laughed politely. Nora's fingers squeezed my knee under the table once. I told myself it was harmless. Just proud mom energy. Then the appetizers came. People relaxed. Glasses filled. Mark made a speech about leadership and reliability, and my face got hot in a way that wasn't embarrassment, but gratitude. For once, my work was being seen. I started to breathe. And then my mother stood up. She didn't ask. She didn't wait for a pause. She stood up like it was her moment too. She lifted her glass, tapped it with her fork, and said, "If you'll all excuse me, I'd like to say something." My first instinct was to stop her. My second instinct was to freeze. Guess which one won? Nora's posture stiffened beside me. Mark looked surprised but smiled because he didn't know. My mother looked around like she owned the room. "My son," she began, voice loud enough that nearby tables glanced over, "has always been special. He didn't get here alone. He got here because of us." I felt my face tighten. "Here we go," she continued. "We sacrificed everything. We built him. We made him who he is." A couple of my coworkers nodded politely. She was speaking in a language they understood, proud parent, supportive home. But I knew the next sentence before she said it. "You can't outgrow us," she declared. "You can't act like you don't need us anymore. We built you." The room went a little too quiet. Not dead quiet, but that uncomfortable dip where people aren't sure if they're supposed to clap. Nora turned her head slightly toward me. Her eyes asked the question she couldn't ask out loud in front of my boss. "Is she about to do what I think she's about to do?" My mother's smile widened. "And since you're doing so well now," she said, "it's time to remember where you came from." My chest tightened. Mark's smile faltered, just a fraction. "We've been talking," my mother continued, "about you coming home more. About helping your father and me the way we helped you." There it was. The hook inside the compliment. The demand inside the pride. She looked directly at me now. "In fact," she said, voice bright and sharp, "I think you should tell everyone what you promised me." I didn't promise her anything. I stared at her. She didn't blink. Nora's hand slipped off my knee and onto the table, fingers pressed together tightly. My father looked down at his plate. Of course he did. "What are you talking about?" I asked quietly, forcing the words through my teeth. My mother laughed like I'd made a joke. "Oh, don't be shy," she said loudly. "Tell them. You said you'd help us now that you have a real title." My coworkers looked between us. Mark's expression changed. The polite mask slipped just enough for me to see concern. I felt that old childhood heat in my ears. The same heat from when she'd yelled at me in the grocery store for asking for a candy bar. The same heat from when she told my basketball coach I was lazy because I missed practice for a school project. Public humiliation was her favorite leash. And she just snapped it on, right in front of my boss. Nora's voice came out calm, almost gentle. He didn't promise anything, she said. My mother's head snapped toward her. Excuse me, she asked, too sweet. Nora didn't flinch. This is a work dinner, she said. Let's keep it about his promotion. My mother's smile tightened. Oh, honey, she said, loud enough for everyone. This is exactly what I mean. He's changing. Ever since he married you, he thinks he can outgrow his own family. My boss shifted in his chair. One of the directors looked down into his drink. And my mother kept going, because once she had the stage, she never stopped. He used to respect us, she announced. He used to listen. Now he acts like he's too good. My stomach nodded. I could feel the room trying to pretend it wasn't happening. People are trained to avoid family conflict like it's contagious. My mother knows that. She counts on it. I swallowed and looked at my father. He wouldn't look up. That was its own kind of betrayal. I turned back to my mother. Sit down, I said quietly. What? She asked, eyes wide like I'd slapped her. Sit down, I repeated. Right now. She laughed again. Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm celebrating you. This isn't celebrating, Nora said softly. My mother's eyes narrowed. You see, she told the table. She speaks for him. Nora opened her mouth to respond, but I lifted my hand slightly, not to silence her, to tell her I had it. Because I realized something in that moment. If I didn't take control now, I was going to spend the rest of my life living inside her performance. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly enough that the nearest table looked over again. My mother's eyes lit with triumph, like she thought I was about to do what she wanted. Good, she said, raising her glass again. Tell them. I didn't raise mine. I didn't smile. I looked around the table at my boss and coworkers and felt my face burn. Then I looked at my mother. And I said, clearly, loud enough that everyone could hear. I didn't promise you anything. And you don't get to hijack my life because you gave birth to me. The room went silent. The real kind. The kind that makes your heartbeat sound like a drum. My mother's face froze. My father finally looked up. Nora's breath caught. And my boss, Mark, stared at me like he was seeing an entirely different part of my life. My mother set her glass down slowly. You don't talk to me like that, she whispered. I met her eyes. I just did. And I knew, right then, this wasn't going to end politely. Because my mother didn't come here to celebrate. She came here to remind me who she thought owned me. And for the first time in my life, I was done playing along. You just embarrassed me, my mother said, loud enough for the entire table. There it was. Not I embarrassed you. Not I overstepped. She repositioned instantly. Victim. The glass in her hand trembled slightly, but not from hurt. From fury. I embarrassed you. I repeated. Yes, she snapped. In front of your boss. Mark shifted in his chair. It's fine, he said quickly, trying to defuse it. But my mother ignored him. You don't talk to your parents like that, she continued, voice rising. After everything we did. There it was again. The ledger. The invisible bill I've apparently been carrying since birth. Nora stayed seated, but her back was straight now. Steady. Watchful. This isn't the time or place, she said calmly. Oh, it's the perfect place, my mother shot back. He needs to remember where he came from. I know exactly where I came from, I said. Do you? She challenged. And just like that, the restaurant faded a little. Because this wasn't new. This was her favorite strategy. Whenever I hit a milestone, she rewrote it as her accomplishment. When I graduated college, she told everyone she'd pushed me through it. When I bought our house, she said, well, you learned discipline from us. When I worked 70-hour weeks during inventory season, she told relatives, he has my work ethic. She never celebrated. She claimed, you think this promotion is yours? She demanded now, gesturing around. Who paid for your first laptop? Who drove you to interviews? Who taught you to speak properly? I was 16, I said. And you wouldn't be here without us. That's how parenting works, Nora said quietly. My mother's eyes flashed toward her. You are out of line. No, Nora replied. You are. My father finally spoke, barely above a murmur. Let's just sit down. My mother rounded on him. Don't start, she warned. And he shrank. He always shrank. That's when I felt it. The shift from embarrassment to anger. Because she wasn't just humiliating me. She was humiliating him too. Mom, I said evenly. This is my work dinner. And we're your family. That doesn't give you control. She laughed harshly. Control? Is that what you think this is? Yes. Her face hardened. You think I want your money? It's not about money. Then what? She demanded. It's about ownership. The word hit the table like a dropped knife. One of my coworkers coughed awkwardly. My mother leaned forward. I own nothing, she said sharply. I just refuse to be discarded. There it was. The crack in the armor. Discarded. You're not discarded, I said. You're just not in charge. Her eyes widened like I'd insulted her. In charge, she repeated. Of my own son. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Thick. She looked around at the faces watching her. You see this? She said to the table. You see how he talks to me now? No one answered. Because no one wanted to get involved. She tried another angle. You used to ask my advice, she said, softer now. You used to need me. I swallowed. That part was true. As a kid, I needed her for everything. And she liked it that way. When I was 8, I wasn't allowed to pick my own clothes because I didn't understand presentation. When I was 13, she read my messages for safety. When I was 17, she filled out my college applications herself because she didn't trust me to represent the family properly. Every step toward independence had been treated like betrayal. You don't need me anymore, she said now, and there was something raw in her voice. I don't need supervision, I corrected. Her expression changed again, hurt to rage in half a second. So this is it, she snapped. You're cutting us off because you got a fancy title? I'm not cutting you off. Then prove it. There it was again. Prove it. The loyalty test. In fact, she continued, voice rising. If you're so independent, why don't you tell them how often you ignore our calls? My stomach tightened. This is not appropriate, I said. You never visit, she pressed. You barely come home. I have a job. We had jobs too, she shouted. We still showed up for our parents. Nora's jaw clenched. Showing up isn't the same as controlling, she said. My mother slammed her hand on the table. There it is again. She's brainwashed you. That word. Brainwashed. Mark shifted again, clearly uncomfortable. One of the directors glanced at his watch. And suddenly I realized something. This wasn't just about humiliating me. This was about reclaiming dominance in front of an audience. If she could shrink me here, she could shrink me anywhere. You don't get to rewrite this, I said quietly. Rewrite what? My life. Her face went red. You wouldn't have a life without us. Yes, I said. But you don't get to run it. You're arrogant, she hissed. I'm grown. She stood up fully now. If you think you can outgrow your parents, you're wrong, she said, voice carrying across the restaurant. You will always belong to us. There it was. The real belief. Belong. Not connect. Belong. Like property. You don't belong to anyone, Nora said gently. My mother spun toward her. Stay out of this. He won't, Nora said. And neither will I. The tension at the table was unbearable now. Mark finally spoke, trying to pull it back. Let's take a breath. But my mother cut him off. No, she said sharply. I want to know something. She turned to me. If your father and I needed help tomorrow, would you drop everything? Yes, I said immediately. And if we asked you to move back home for a while? No. She blinked. If we asked you to include us in financial decisions? No. If we asked you to prioritize us over her? She demanded, pointing at Nora. No. The word didn't shake. It didn't hesitate. And it landed like a hammer. My mother's face went white. You see, she said to the room. You see how she's separated him from us? I'm not separated, I said. I'm married. That's temporary. Nora inhaled sharply. And something inside me snapped. Not explosively, just cleanly. You will not call my marriage temporary, I said. You think vows mean more than blood? Yes. Dead silence. My mother stared at me like she didn't recognize the person in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Because the version of me she raised would have apologized by now. Would have folded. Would have promised something vague to restore peace. Instead, I stood there, calm, and she realized the leash wasn't working anymore. You've changed, she whispered. Yes, I said, and that word hit her harder than anything else, because she could no longer claim authorship of who I was becoming. You've changed, she repeated, louder this time, like she was presenting evidence. Yes, I said again. Her face hardened. No, she snapped. You've been changed. There it was. Not growth. Corruption. She turned to the table again, desperate for an ally. He used to call me before every big decision, she said. He used to ask my advice. I didn't interrupt, because that part was true. I used to call her before everything. Job interviews, apartment leases, car purchases. And every time I did, the conversation followed the same script. She would start with, well, if you think that's best, then slowly dismantle my confidence, then offer a better option that required her involvement. Control disguised as guidance. You stopped calling, she said now, and her voice cracked slightly. Yes, I said. Why? Because every call turned into an audit. The room shifted. What does that mean? My aunt asked cautiously. It means, I said, keeping my tone steady. Every decision I made was treated like a mistake unless she approved it. That's not true, my mother shouted. It is, I said. I looked directly at her. When I accepted this promotion, your first question wasn't congratulations. It was, does this mean you'll move closer to us? Her lips pressed thin. And when I said no, you told me I was abandoning family. You are, she burst out. There it was again. Abandonment. You think living 20 minutes away and not answering every call is abandonment. I asked. It's disrespect. No, I said. It's boundaries. She scoffed loudly. Boundaries. That word. That's the word people use when they're selfish. I felt something inside me go very still. Not angry. Not reactive. Clear. You don't like boundaries, I said quietly. Because they mean you don't get control. The word hit again. Control. Her face flushed. I don't control you, she snapped. You tried to control this dinner. I was celebrating you. You were demanding a public pledge. Her mouth opened and closed. She hadn't expected that phrasing. I turned to the table. She wanted me to promise financial support tonight, I said plainly. In front of my boss. Gasps. Mark blinked slowly. That's not. My mother began. You asked me to tell everyone what I promised. I continued. Silence. She realized I wasn't going to soften it. This is humiliating, she hissed. Yes, I agreed. It is. And that was the turning point. Because I didn't rush to fix it. I didn't apologize for tone. I didn't cushion it. I just let the truth sit there. My mother looked around the restaurant, suddenly aware that the audience she'd summoned was no longer hers. You wouldn't be sitting here without us, she said weakly. That's true, I said. Her eyes flickered, thinking she'd regained footing. And I'm grateful, I added, for being raised. She straightened slightly. But gratitude doesn't mean ownership, I finished. Her shoulders dropped. You're twisting everything. No, I said. I'm separating things. Separating? She repeated. Yes. You raised me. I respect that. But you don't own my adulthood. Dead quiet. You don't own my career. Silence. You don't own my marriage. Her breathing grew uneven. And you don't get to hijack my professional life to test my loyalty. That landed. Mark shifted forward slightly. It's okay, he said carefully. Let's reset. No, I said gently. This needs to be clear. I turned back to my mother. You said I can't outgrow you. Yes, she shot back, regaining some volume. You can't. I already have. The words didn't shake. They didn't rise. They just existed. She stared at me like I'd just declared war. You think you're better than us now, she whispered. No, I said. I just refuse to be smaller. Something in her expression cracked. For a second, I saw fear. Not of losing me. Of losing control. You're embarrassing me, she said again, quieter now. I'm defending myself, I replied. My father finally spoke, voice thin. Let's just go. She didn't move. She looked at me one last time. If you walk away from us, she said, don't expect us to be there when things fall apart. There it was. The withdrawal of conditional support. I nodded once. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm standing still. You're the one trying to pull me backward. She flinched. That was the moment she lost the stage. Because there was no dramatic reaction from me. No yelling. No pleading. Just calm refusal. She looked around the table one more time, searching for validation. No one met her eyes. Not my aunt. Not my cousins. Not even my father. She grabbed her purse. You've chosen, she said. Yes, I replied. She waited for more. For apology. For hesitation. There was none. You'll regret this, she muttered. I won't, I said. And for the first time in my life, I meant it without fear. She walked out of the restaurant. My father followed, slower. The door closed, and the room exhaled. Mark leaned back in his chair. Well, he said softly, that was something. I felt my face burn again, but differently this time. I'm sorry, I began. You don't need to apologize, he interrupted gently. You handled that well. Handled. Not exploded. Not lost control. Handled. Nora's hand slipped into mine under the table. Her grip was warm. Steady. You okay? She asked quietly. I looked at her. At the people still sitting there. At the empty chair where my mother had been standing minutes earlier. And I realized something profound. The power she held over me had always depended on one thing. My silence. And tonight, in front of everyone, I had broken it. The rest of the dinner didn't collapse. It recalibrated. There was an awkward minute where everyone pretended to examine their menus again, like maybe the whole thing had been a dramatic appetizer. Then Mark raised his glass. To earn promotions, he said deliberately. And to leadership. A couple of people echoed it. Glasses clinked. Not loudly, but enough. And that's when I understood something. She had tried to hijack the narrative. And failed. When we got home that night, my phone was already vibrating. 3 missed calls. 2 voicemails. 1 text. Mom, I cannot believe you did that to me. I stared at the screen. Did that to her. Not what she did to me. Not what she did in front of my boss. No self-awareness. Just injury. Nora leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me. You don't owe her a response tonight, she said. I know. But I also knew something else. If I didn't set a boundary clearly, she would rewrite this in her head as temporary defiance. So I typed, Mom, tonight was inappropriate. You do not get to speak for me at work events. You do not get to demand promises publicly. If you cannot respect that, we will be limiting contact. I read it twice. It felt terrifying. Then I hit send. Her reply came in under a minute. So now you're threatening me? There it was again. Boundaries reframed as aggression. I didn't engage. I turned my phone face down. And for the first time in years, I slept without replaying a conversation in my head. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. My father called once. Your mother's upset, he said. I figured. You embarrassed her. She embarrassed herself. He sighed. You know how she is. I did. That had been the problem. You don't speak to her like that, he added weakly. I spoke the truth. There was a long pause. She feels replaced. That word again. Replaced. She's not replaced, I said calmly. She's just not in charge. He didn't argue. Because he knew. He just didn't want to confront it. 2 weeks later, she showed up at our house unannounced. Old habit. She used to let herself in with the spare key. But that key didn't work anymore. I'd changed the locks the day after the dinner. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just practically. She rang the doorbell. Twice. Then pounded. Nora looked at me. Do we open it? She asked. Yes, I said. But not like before. I opened the door halfway. What are you doing? My mother demanded immediately. Visiting, I said. You changed the locks. Yes. How dare you? You don't live here. Her mouth fell open slightly. I am your mother. And this is my house. She pushed against the door slightly. I didn't move. You think you can shut me out? She asked. I think you need to call before coming over. Her voice rose. This is exactly what I meant. You're erasing us. No, I said evenly. I'm setting rules. Rules, she spat. For me? Yes. The word didn't shake. It didn't apologize. It just stood there. You don't get to control my schedule. I continued. You don't get to speak for me at work. You don't get to guilt me into financial commitments. And you don't get to show up uninvited. Her face flushed red. So this is punishment. No, I said. This is consequence. She stepped back slightly, stunned by the phrasing. You think you're so mature, she whispered. I am. And you think you built yourself? No, I said. You helped build me. Her eyes flickered. But I finished the construction, I added. That landed. Because it was the first time I'd separated her contribution from her ownership. You're cold, she said. No, I replied. I'm grown. She looked past me, trying to catch sight of Nora. Is she listening? Yes, Nora called from behind me. And I agree. My mother's jaw tightened. You've poisoned him, she said. No, Nora answered calmly. I married him. And that was it. The script had run out. There was no stage. No audience. No boss to impress. Just a closed door and a boundary she couldn't cross. She stood there for a long second. Then she said something softer. You think you don't need us. I don't need control, I corrected. I need respect. She didn't have a response for that. Because respect isn't something you can demand publicly. It's something you practice privately. She turned and walked down the driveway without another word. No dramatic exit. No screaming. Just small. We didn't go no contact. We went structured contact. Invites only. Conversations that ended if they turned into guilt lectures. No unannounced visits. No financial discussions. The first few times I ended a call mid-manipulation, my hands shook. But I still ended it. And something interesting happened. She tried the old tactics. They didn't work. She tried playing victim with relatives. But they'd seen the restaurant. They'd heard her tone. The story didn't land the same way. Without an audience she could control, her volume didn't carry. Months passed. My career didn't implode. My marriage didn't crumble. My life didn't collapse from disrespecting my parents. In fact, it got quieter, calmer, more stable. And that's when I realized something that hit harder than any argument we'd had. You can't outgrow someone who sees you as an extension. Because in their mind, you're not growing. You're defecting. But growth isn't betrayal. It's separation. And separation is necessary for adulthood. She once told me, when I was 8, that everything I achieved would reflect on her. She wasn't entirely wrong, but it didn't belong to her. It reflected the environment she provided, not ownership over the outcome. You can't outgrow us, she had said. She was wrong. You can outgrow control. You can outgrow guilt. You can outgrow humiliation. And you can still acknowledge where you started without letting it define where you're allowed to end up. The night of my promotion, she tried to shrink me in front of my boss. Instead, she revealed herself in front of witnesses. And once people see the pattern, it's harder for it to hide. I didn't cut her off in rage. I didn't scream. I didn't insult her. I just stopped folding. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing you can do. Because control only survives on compliance. And the moment you stop complying, it collapses on its own.